Hey, welcome in. It's the North Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, episode number 4. As we're working through our fall season, as always, this Prepcast is on Facebook, YouTube, and X being streamed live. And if you miss out, you can always tune in on your Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hayden Uhlenkott here, and I got to bring on our North expert, Ryan Scaggs. Scaggs, how you doing, man? It's been a good week, and you're going into your season opener for your football debut
Yeah,
this week.
it's kind of weird. I usually do some early games, but the North, like in District 1's been kind of scant with scheduling this year. So, yeah, getting underway this week. Got a big game, Grangeville coming up to Priest River. So we'll be doing our first game from Priest River this Friday night. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, newly renovated stadium, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's supposed to be great from what I've heard. I mean, we talked to Max about it a little last week, but yeah, I mean, we did basketball for the first time up there last winter, and they treated us like royalty. And looking forward to making another trip up there. I mean, just 45 minutes up the road, but depending on the speed limit. So, yeah, no, we're excited to be up there, and we'll be new partner in the booth this year, breaking in James Bailey. So it'll be nice to have him on the broadcast with me Friday night for that one. Should be a fun game.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It's always great when, Idaho sports is always known for, or at least we're trying to get to that point where Idaho sports is always a big event. And so
Yeah.
when people see Idaho sports walk in, it's always super cool. And so we're happy to be able to bring that to all the, all the schools, all the players, all the athletes. It's always a blast. Well, we have quite a week, but we figured we should start with volleyball. We'll hit on football and soccer and a little bit of golf throughout the prepcast, but we'll start with volleyball. And, the biggest thing that I take away from the last couple weeks, to me, it's Kellogg. They're 7-0, and they've cruised through everyone.
Yep. I mean, we talked about it in our preview of kind of like picking favorites out of the respective conferences and the classifications. Kellogg was the team I kind of put a pin in. Like, that's a team you got to watch out of District 1, District 2 in the CIL, and they've shown out so far. I mean, they blanked Orfino 3-0. Aaliyah Philp in the game had 4 aces and 13 straight points on serve. And we kind of talked about this beforehand, but you said like that'll win you some ball games. And yeah, Kellogg's been absolutely dominant thus far early on in the season, and they're showing flashes of something special brewing out there in Kellogg.
Yeah, a couple other games, Lewiston swept McCall. In the White Pine League, Potlatch is still doing real. They've played Lapway and Deary, and they've swept them both. Potlatch looks to be pretty good. They're 4-3 on the year, bouncing around a little bit more. Grangeville still has yet to play a game. Their first game is on Saturday, I believe, against St. Mary. So that's the only team I haven't seen play a game. And Kendrick. So those are the only two teams we haven't seen play yet. But sticking up north, Coeur d'Alene went 1-4 sets against Post Falls. They look to be still really good. They're 3-0 on the year. And then Moscow's doing really well this year. They're 6-1, and they've swept Sandpoint earlier this week as well. Sandpoint's that really young team that we talked with Max about, that we can, they might take their lumps early, but they're a team that maybe could come around in the next couple years. But yeah, Moscow, Lewiston, 6-1, 5-1. What can what's your kind of takeaway out of 5A?
So I mean, you look at 5A, it's pretty balanced. I mean, Moscow's looking really good. Lewiston's been, showing flashes. Lakeland really haven't seen what they're, capable of yet. I mean, I'm trying to think if they've played any matches yet. So I know there's some big tournaments going on in Spokane the next couple weeks. So expect to see them, play some of the bigger teams from the Spokane area, which will be a good competition level for that team, because I know there's high aspirations with that returning group of players that they've got from last year. And I mean, Troy's off to a hot start. Obviously, in District 2, they beat Logos 3-0. Troy's 7-1 on the year so far. Their only loss was to Lewiston at the Judy Fong Invitational. So I mean, you're losing to a 5A team as a 2A school. You're doing all right. I think there's 2 surprising teams, I think, that have been really kind of opened my eyes early on. Priest River 3-0 on the year right now. That's a nice showing. They beat St. Mary's in straight sets last night. So the Spartans are kind of off to a little bit of a run so far. And Wallace took them five sets to beat Clark Fork last night. But I mean, listen to the stat line for volleyball. Kylie Phillips had 21 digs, 8 kills, and 3 blocks. Aubrey Birdsell had 18 assists. And then Kylie Stutzky had 12 assists and 4 aces for the Miners last night in the win, 5-set win over Clark Fork. So Wallace off to a nice run. I kind of pinned them as my favorite in the conference up north and in District 1. And so far they're making me look pretty good. My picks so far this year, we could talk about football later on, but I'm kind of on a roll as far as picking things right now. So, but yeah, we'll talk about that in football. But yeah, I mean, the area teams thus far, I mean, I think we've seen a lot from what we expected, but there has been bright spots like you talked about with Kellogg. Priest River is making things interesting, and hopefully, I think they have a date coming up in the next week or two, so we'll be able to see what Priest River really is showing as they take on the Wildcats.
A few comments coming in. Max Oswald, our great friend, saying hello, and that Priest River Kellogg tomorrow will be a big one.
Yep,
Battle of the undefeated.
Yeah,
that's going to be exciting. Max, I hope we get a great report from you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
as always, Sam Buffington, he's just coming on to say hi. He's not going to repost the stream or anything like that. Come on, Sam. You always can subscribe to us on YouTube and like our stuff on Facebook, everywhere. Come on, Sam. Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of good teams, in the 2A volleyball world up north. Lakeside is still 2-0 with Wallace at 2-1. So I think that seems to be, Genesis Prep lost a lot of seniors. So that seems to be the two, it's really early, but it seems to be the 2-man race up there. And then, you're right. Out of 2A down in the White Pine, Troy and Potlatch. Those are the two just juggernauts. They are really good this year. And, I remember watching the volleyball preview with,
Lindsay Togi.
Lindsay, yes. Lindsay and Brandon. Yeah. And they were kind of discrediting Troy. And, I just don't buy it. I think Troy's legit. I think Troy's going to be playing deep into the state tournament. I just would be shocked if I don't see it.
Yeah. And going back to Wallace real quick, too, you said playing well up north. I mean, their only loss this far is to Kellogg. So, this Wallace team is pretty good. They've got great size up front. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Miners can do. I mean, their coaching staff knows we're big fans of the program. We always have been. But, they'll usually jump in the chat here once in a while if they're listening. So, but yeah, it's you talk about teams that can make deep runs. I think we've got, in a majority of the classifications, we're already seeing some teams kind of separate themselves a little bit and showing some of that prowess that can make a really nice run deep into the state tournament, especially in 3A, 2A, 4A, possibly between Timberlake, Bonners Ferry. We'll see what we can see there. But 5A, you've got Lakeland, and then Moscow's showing up thus far too.
Yeah, 4A, Timberlake's only 2-1, which is crazy. They've played 3 games, right? Bonners Ferry's played 7. Bonners Ferry right now is 0-7. They went to the Judy Fong Invitational and they lost every single game. And a lot of it was to teams that were, in a lower classification outside of Moscow. So, Timberlake seems to be in the driver's seat there, but they have not played any of their games. So there's, really good chance that Bonners Ferry, they just have to beat Timberlake. They could be, 2-20 heading into the state tournament and have an opportunity.
Timberlake's losses to guess who? Kellogg. So, I mean, if you really want to know how good this Kellogg team is, they've already knocked off, one of the better teams from 2A and one of the better teams from 4A. So, this Wildcat team's looking legit. And, you look at Timberlake's schedule, they had the match with Genesis Prep yesterday postponed. So they've got St. Mary's coming up next week, and then Bonners Ferry, that first match next week on Thursday. And then they're going to be heading to Freeman for the Rippershot tournament next weekend, which we'll talk about during the following Prepcast because there's a lot of teams that are going to be at that tournament. But, Timberlake's got a pretty favorable schedule if you really look at it. The really big dates you look coming up for the Tigers is going to be they're playing Lakeland twice this year. And then other than that, they've got a pretty favorable schedule to pick up some W's.
Yeah, and then what Max's comment here with Clark Fork and Bonners Ferry playing on Friday, that's going to be a game that, I don't know who it'll tell us more about. It might tell us more about Clark Fork and, Clark Fork's, they haven't won a game yet in in their classification. Maybe, they can win that game against Bonners Ferry. Maybe Clark Fork's a little better than we think. I don't know. It's going to be interesting
they
to
pushed
see.
Wallace to 5 sets. So
Yeah, it's not like they can't play. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we look at 6A, there's not a lot of games being played yet. You have some of these teams down south that have already racked up 6, 7, 8 games. Up north, Coeur d'Alene's only played 3, Lake City's played 1, and Post Falls has played 3. And Post Falls' one loss was to Coeur d'Alene. Once they get deeper into the season, I think we'll get a little better idea. I don't think maybe that was last week, but Lake City has not played any of their teams in their conference yet. So
no, they've played Sandpoint and Moscow, and they lost to Moscow 3-1. They play Lakeland tomorrow, then they'll play Mount Spokane on Saturday. So yeah, the season's yet young for the T-Wolves.
Yeah, hard to make any sort of prediction what we think 6A is going to look like. You would think Coeur d'Alene's the favorite. They have 2 girls going to play college volleyball. One to St. Point Lomas University.
Point Loma, Point Loma Nazarene, yeah.
And down in San Diego. And then I think it's Kaylee Carl. Is it Paulson? She's going to play in Montana, I believe.
Yeah.
Might be mistaken there. So, going to be exciting to see how 6A turns out. But, let's switch gears a bit. Let's look over to soccer. There are, we talked about Kellogg's really rolling in the volleyball landscape. In the boys soccer landscape, Sandpoint's on a roll. They are 5-0 right now, and they're going to play Coeur d'Alene on Thursday. And that is a matchup that I'm looking forward to. Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene.
That's Coeur d'Alene coming off a tough loss to Hawaii 2-0. But we want to know how Sandpoint is competition-wise. I mean, that's a great, marker, kind of a litmus test for that program. Sandpoint, they beat Lake City in their opener 1-0. And then they've taken care of business. I mean, they're averaging.
Yeah, they outscored opponents
7.5 goals a game is their average right now, since that first game.
Yeah, in the last 3 games, they've outscored their opponents 20-1. I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of unheard of in soccer.
Well, if you throw in the 6-0 win last night, I mean, they've only given up 2 goals on the year so far. So, yeah, this Sandpoint team is third on a roll right now, and just kind of looking ahead at the schedule too. I mean, there's, they're going to play Coeur d'Alene tomorrow, and then they play Lake City again next week. And then Coeur d'Alene again towards the end of the month. I mean, could we see the Sandpoint team run the table? It's extremely possible. And, they're going to have to be on their A game against Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene's a tougher team than record would indicate. But the Sandpoint team right now is looking as a legit contender.
Yeah, we'll touch on the girls in a minute, like Sam mentioned. But, I mean, Lake City's putting up football scores against teams right now. Lake City looks to be pretty good right now. Other teams, Lakeland, Post Falls 3-1. Like you mentioned, Hawaii beat Coeur d'Alene 2-0. Orfino beat Timberlake 5-3. I thought that was interesting. Looks to be like Orfino is getting things in a roll. And then Moscow beat Grangeville 3-1. Moscow looks to be also fairly solid outside of their loss to Sandpoint, because I think Sandpoint's going to be competing late into the season. I'm fairly convinced of that.
Yeah, no, and they usually does. I mean, it comes down district tournament. It was, I think, 2-3 years ago, Sandpoint was undefeated on the season and lost in the championship game at districts and missed state altogether. So, anything can happen in that district tournament. Lewiston and the girls looks extremely strong right now too. Which that game that Lake City was supposed to play with Lewiston was postponed last week, and I would have loved to have seen that game, but so far Lake City on the year in 6A is looking really strong. Lewiston's looking extremely strong in 5A. I really look at those top 3 teams: Lewiston, Sandpoint, Moscow. That's going to be where the lion's share of the competition is going to be taking place within conference play this year. But I mean, obviously Post Falls is playing down too, but Post Falls they're struggling right now. They're on the bus, and they got to right the ship, do the Trojans, and try to manufacture some wins this year. They got shut out last night 14-0 by Lake City. So, that conference with 5 teams helps a little bit, but they're, you kind of look at the level of competition. There's really 3 that are kind of standing out there in front of the rest of the pack.
I totally agree there. Doug Swanson with a nice comment. Sure appreciate you guys supporting and loving all our athletes. Of course, Doug. What else do we got to do? We have to do this. We got to be the ones standing up. In the chat, Max, once again, Bulldogs have a couple of sophomore studs. He's talking about boys soccer from Madrid, Spain, in addition to a ton of returners. This team's going to be tough to beat. Yeah, Max is doing a great job covering those guys, and I'm excited to see how their season progresses. One thing I wanted to talk about, Scaggs, was golf. In golf, there was a tournament last week up in Coeur d'Alene, and there's a kid from Lewis. His name's Ashton Littoral. He's a freshman, and he hit hole in one and placed first place in that tournament. In individual scoring. Had 2 birdies, 2 eagles. Pretty impressive showing for a freshman. I tell you what, that's crazy.
Yeah, that would be a round I could only dream of. 1, hitting an ace, but then 2, you go, birdie, eagle. That's just, ridiculous play. And Lewiston's got a phenom there as a freshman. And literally, he's going to be a stud in that Bengal team. He's carrying that Bengal team. There's some good players in that program. There historically is. I mean, Lewiston's kind of, one of those areas that you get to go play year-round golf. And that's kind of a nice thing. So you see the Valley turns out some great golfers, Lewiston and Clarkston alike, historically. So, seeing the growth within the sport in the region, Brandon and I hit on it a lot last year, with the talent pool growing. It's been good to see. And I look forward to seeing what Austin can do. And if he can keep this pace of play up and being able to drop scores like he is right now, I mean, he could find himself on the podium come state tournament time as a freshman.
Yeah, in that tournament, Lake City did win both the girls and the boys side of things. So Lake City looks to be pretty solid. I think they had multiple finishers within the top 5. So Lake City looks to be pretty strong. But, Scaggs, this is our favorite time of the year. It's football season. Yep. And we got to hit on some of our football games. And here's a little week 2 recap. So Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston both dropped to 0-2. They both play each other this week. That's going to be big. Lakeland and Sandpoint move on to 2-0. Bonners Ferry rebounds versus Priest River. And I tell you what, the points are just coming for anybody in 8-man football up north. I mean, wow. Kendrick put up 96 points against Oakley. Could have put up way more. Prairie put up 55 or 58 against Deary.
Coeur d'Alene put up like 68 or something like that. Yeah, it's
lots of big score. I mean, let's start there, Scaggs. Kendrick, obviously, it's hard. It's going to be really hard for us throughout the year to give them the right credit that they deserve, because they're not playing in a lot of close games. They're not. Most of their kids are getting sat down at halftime to take a seat for the rest of the game, and the JV kids come in and the JV kids do great. But outside of that, in 2A, we're 2 weeks in. What's your takeaway been outside of Kendrick? What stands out to you? Even looking up to the North Star and the White Pine.
I think there's some unknowns still, and I think we're going to start seeing that. Potlatch is going to play a big game down in New Plymouth this weekend, so we're going to be able to see what the Loggers are bringing to the table. Cami, I don't know if they've been really truly tested thus far. What do the Cubs have, bringing to the table? New coach, change at QB. That's going to be, real interesting. I mean, they blew the doors off of Lapway in that game on Friday. And so, Prairie won big over Deary. I mean, Deary's been a pretty decent team at 1A. But
yeah, they play Valley this week. So
yeah,
Prairie and Potlatch both.
Yeah, they scheduled up, and I like that. I really do for both those teams. I don't think you pick up a loss in that game. I don't think it hurts you a ton, because the Max Preps rankings, with the strength of schedule you have with your non-conference plus your conference schedule, you're going to be just fine come seeding time, as long as you take care of business within league and beat who you're supposed to beat. But Coach Hasselstrom's got some guys, and so between Prairie, Camia, and Potlatch, I look at all 3 of those teams thus far. Realistically, they should be playoff teams. Playing Valley this weekend, I mean, Valley's good. Outside of Kendrick and Logos, I look at Valley as the next team there that's really going to be a challenge for anybody else. And so, we saw, we kind of remove Kendrick as the outlier, but, how do teams compare? Like, you could look at Kendrick's JV, I think is or backups is every bit as good as a lot of the White Pine. And so, should Prairie and Kamei and Potlatch be competitive against those teams like Hagerman, Butte County, Valley? Yeah, I think they should. And it's going to take obviously the guys on the field. You can talk all you want on the microphone or on paper, but it's going to ultimately happen on the field of play on Friday night. But there's some a lot of kudos need to go around to the ADs and coaches for scheduling these tough games and do the meet in the middle games. I really think that has changed the 8-man landscape, because we didn't always see those games. You would see a lot of 1A, 2A crossover games that would take place instead of picking up games against Butte County or Hagerman in years past. And, the White Pine schools are not shying away from competition.
No, it's been really, I love how much that, all of Kendrick's non-league games are with teams down south. All of Logos games are with teams down south, or they're going to play Coeur d'Alene. Like, they're really challenging themselves, and I think it's going to be exciting to see. Prairie does play Valley. That one will be on IdahoSports.com Friday night. I think that's a 6 o'clock game in, I guess local time, Pacific Standard Time. So that'll be a game that everyone needs to tune into. That'll be fun. Looking up north, Lakeside seems to be down a little bit. They don't have Tyson Charlie. That was a game where Council looked really, really good, and definitely took it to Lakeside. So will be interesting to see how Lakeside adjusts throughout the year. What kind of formations? I tell you what, I saw some interesting formations from Jerry, Louie, McGee. Definitely not anything I've seen before, but shout out to all those kids that were playing hard. Sam in the chat, I'll be covering Lewiston at Coeur d'Alene football on Friday. Tune in on North Idaho Sports on Instagram. Free shout out to Sam and live video updates. That's going to be a big game. We'll touch on that in a second. And then, Coeur d'Alene with a big win last week too. They're going to be, Coeur d'Alene kind of seems like the team that's going to challenge Wallace for that league title.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene, I was high on them to start the year, and I think I'm only getting more stronger in feeling about that. The way they're able to run the ball, but they can throw if they have to, and they've got some threats on the outside with Haynes and Grant Clemens, a year older, is a little more mature in the pocket. But John Denke is an absolute stud, and we kind of said, like, hey, pick a name, at the beginning of the year of somebody that should be on everyone's radar that might not be. And that was my pick. I'm like, everybody in the state will know by the end of the season who John Denke is, because he's set at the pace he's at right now. We'll talk about during helmet stickers, but he's on pace to do some crazy stuff if he continues to have the games that he's had so far.
Yeah, he looks really, really solid. Now let's look up to 3A, 4A. We'll kind of mesh them all together, because seems like almost all these teams have played each other at least once already. At least somebody's played someone. In 3A, Orfino still looking for their first win. They're going to play Salmon this week. That's a game I'm curious about. I want to see what it looks like. I would think Orfino should win that game, but I'm very curious to watch that game. St. Mary's plays Bonners Ferry this week. That'll be a good test for Hayden Humphrey's group. And then obviously we have the big, massive game, the game of the year, I think, Grangeville Priest River. What are your initial opinions of that? You're going to be covering it there on IdahoSports.com.
The team that we haven't even mentioned either is Kellogg. And, so we I think Grangeville and Priest River got a lot of fanfare thus far. I mean, early on. And I don't think the loser of that game Friday night's necessarily out. I think it's going to be a huge lift to kind of get that monkey off your back to start the year, because then you're basically playing against yourself the rest of the way. Priest River and Grangeville, and Max is in the chat too about this, but with Priest River back to full health, it's going to be a heck of a ball game. I mean, it really is. I'm excited to be on the call for that one. I don't necessarily want to pick a winner just because I want to seem that I'm kind of neutral, but there's a lot at stake, I think, for both those teams. It's a de facto league championship game per se. I think there's kind of a three-way league championship. Just looking at it early on between them, Kellogg could certainly throw a wrench in the gears easily. If St. Mary's figures things out and gets on a roll, based on what we saw them do against Salmon last week. If they can continue the momentum, St. Mary's is going to be making things interesting against some folks too, because they play really physical. So you're getting some sloppy games late. It's kind of like one of those ones. Who's got the best ground game? Whose line is healthy? And whose quarterback doesn't give it up and make mistakes? And you go into those three areas, and then you can look at the coaching and everything else too. But, that we're going to learn a lot about Grangeville and Priest River Friday night in that game, because they're both going to give each other their best shot. And that's a great test early on, because you're not necessarily seeing either of those teams playing the best from 3A down south this year. Like we've seen Grangeville in years past scheduling like a West Side or something else. And, we're not seeing that early. So, if we want to know who the Bulldogs are, this is going to be their best shot early on.
100% agree with you. Grangeville, I think, does play after this. They'll play West Jefferson and McCall this year. So those will be the two trips they head down south. But, speaking of Kellogg, they play – this is Kellogg's schedule, essentially. They play St. Mary's next week, and then they go Timberlake, Bonners Ferry, Moscow. So they knock out every 4A school. Then they play Anaconda, and then they end the year with Grangeville and Priest River. By the end of the year,
Anaconda, Anaconda's been decent. So, Brandon will applaud me for knowing Montana football, but that scheduling's a little rough there for Kellogg, but at the same time, there's some winnable ball games in there. And so, especially the way that you're able to throw the ball, if you're on in the passing game and you're able to move the ball efficiently on offense, you're going to take some of that pressure off your defense. That Kellogg will know. And I think people will find out sooner than later, just based on that schedule.
Yeah, totally agree there. Looking up in the 4A landscape, Timberlake and Bonners Ferry, as well as Moscow. Moscow's now 1-1 on the year. Timberlake 0-2, and Bonners Ferry 1-1. Bonners Ferry, to me, seemed like the favorite right now. Is that crazy to say?
No, not at all. Because I was thinking it going into the year a little bit, like it was between them and Moscow, knowing how banged up Moscow is. And it's going to be tough to get some majority of those guys back, just based on the level of injury that those are. Bonners Ferry, I would see realistically the favorite thus far. I know Coach would probably hate me saying that, because he doesn't want his kids drinking the Kool-Aid. He wants them playing with a chip on their shoulder. But you got guys like Keenan Moss that can run the ball like that and take care of the ball on offense with the quarterback, just not giving up turnovers. And you play stingy D, you're going to be in ball games. And, good on them. They're playing a real, scheduling up playing Lakeland week 1. Lakeland's going to be really good this year. And the 5A IEL is showing flashes that the two teams that are going to be on top there could be pretty darn good. So for Bonners, I don't hold much from getting, shellacked by Lakeland week 1. I think they learned kind of a little bit of an identity there, though, that hey, we're going to have to win ugly. And they showed it Friday night. They took care of a good Priest River team and, earned that victory. And so Bonners Ferry moving through the schedule, Timberlake took some lumps. They scheduled Sugar early and, in a meet in the middle game and kind of took it on the chin from the Diggers. But, they're going to have some growing pains. There's a lot of new faces in that lineup. And so, I would agree. I think Bonners Ferry is in the driver's seat as it stands now. What happens by, mid-October, we'll see. But if everybody stays healthy right now, I like Bonners Ferry's chances.
Yeah, and you have, of course, scheduling. All those teams all play each other the last 2-3 weeks of the school of the year. Like they all schedule all their non-league games first, and so yeah, at the end of the year, late October, that's going to be the only games that matter on their schedule. Look up at 5A now. We'll fly through this one. Sandpoint and Lakeland. I mean, they're getting a ton of street cred, in the media polls, and I don't know, they're looking to be pretty darn good, competing for, deep into the playoffs. And then Lewiston's just killing themselves with, mistakes right now. They're not that far behind. They really aren't.
Mm-mm. No, and Coach Hobart would say that, and obviously they lost their quarterback at Columbia 2 weeks ago, and had to play with a de facto backup that I still think is very serviceable. I think he's a pretty good player. that Lewiston team, they've got some talent in that lineup. You saw it Friday night firsthand. There's some guys that can play. But it's the mistake. They got to play mistake-free football. They can't be turning it over, deep in the opponent's territory. They can't be, shooting themselves in the foot deep in their own territory. And, they can clean some of that stuff up. That's just discipline. But there's some big, that 5A I really like. And you look at, we're kind of looking up at Sandpoint and Lakeland. I mean, Lewiston was picked as the favorite early on with having the new coach and the fanfare that came with it. But, let's talk about Sandpoint. Like, Buckhout has been showing out at QB. I mean, he has been rock solid at quarterback. And then we finally saw Maverick Gomez go off and, have the game that we expect for him to have. He's kind of player I, alluded to. He reminds me of like Max Frank, but with a little bit more top end speed. And Max Frank was a phenomenal talent for the Bulldogs a few years ago. There's, that offensive line is proven to be better than people kind of gave him credit for coming into the year. And then you give points to Coach Knowles. That dude just flat knows how to coach, and he knows how to motivate his guys. I am super excited to see that Lakeland Sandpoint game late in the year. That is going to be a phenomenal ball game between those two clubs.
Yeah, well, let's segue to Sandpoint Post Falls. Sandpoint has this is Max's comment. Sandpoint has really been able to keep defenses on their toes with a stellar pass game. Should be a good one. And then Kevin Buckhout, love to hear a breakdown on Sandpoint Post Falls. Go Dogs. Well, I'll give you a breakdown of what I think of Post Falls. I think Post Falls is good.
Yeah.
They look solid against Lewiston.
I'm not used to seeing Post Falls run the ball as much as they did Friday night. Like that's new to me. But I think they can be serviceable in the passing game just based on the size and the talent they have on the outside.
No, they looked really good with their running game. They had Brandon Felix, who's probably 5'7", $145. He shoots out of a cannon. And then you have this other back, Marshall Tomlinson, and he's like 5'10", maybe 190. And he's kind of the bowling ball. And so they just have this transition where you go from speed, thunder and lightning. And those two really complement each other well. And if Post Falls cleans up the mistakes, their defense continues to get better. Post Falls is going to be tough. And right now, Post Falls is sitting in the driver's seat in 6A. But I think they're going to give Sandpoint everything they can handle.
Yeah. And it will take mistake-free football from the Bulldogs. I mean, Sandpoint loves to be opportunistic on defense. Post Falls has always done that. It's a Coach Bennett team. And, you're going to get rapid fire, fast-paced offense out of Post Falls. They're going to come out, no huddle, and just try to run you into the ground. And you can use your running game almost like, an extra offensive player in the no huddle system because you just tire out. You're not giving your defense a chance to sub as much, or they can't make adjustments. And so they're trying to catch you on the outside napping because you're, putting 9 guys in the box. They get a one-on-one on the outside and throw a fade to Connor Carver in the end zone. Like that's exactly what they did to Lewiston on Friday night. And you saw it firsthand. But I think Sandpoint Postal, it's always been a competitive game. I'm used to seeing that game week 1. Like I'm used to seeing that game early. And, that's looking at it. I mean, the game's going to be won and lost in the trenches in that Post Falls Sandpoint game. I look it up front. And Post Falls, you saw their offensive line firsthand. What was your takeaway? Because I think they're extremely good.
They're huge. Yeah. They're massive. They move bodies.
Yeah.
And having that 2-platoon system, it always is keeping these guys fresh. Michael Scholes in the chat. Felix running behind Scholes is a combo that has worked for years. Yeah, they are. It's tough. Lewiston has a good D-line. I think they get undervalued, and I think Columbia maybe left a bad taste in people's mouths just how well Columbia moved the ball on it. But Lewiston has a solid front seven. And Post Falls moved. And I think part of it is just how much stamina that team has because they don't have to, rely on kids playing both ways. I think that's going to be the challenge for Sandpoint. It's going to be the challenge throughout the whole year is can you keep up with Post Falls pace?
Yeah. And, like I said, because my former coaching days running a no huddle offense is that when you start seeing the guys throwing their hands on their hips, you got them. And Post Falls could see that quite a bit this year. At times, if they're able to move the ball like they did Friday night against Lewiston, I mean, Felix had a monster game. But yeah, Scholes had I mean, he's one of the best offensive line talents we've seen in North Idaho in a while. And there's been some dudes to come out of the area. But I mean, you just talk about from a standpoint of like pure skill at his position, and the technique that he uses is phenomenal. And it's a thing of beauty watching that offensive unit work together, because that offensive line's, they put in the time in the reps, and you can see it. You look at Sandpoint, their X factor for me, like the running game, they've got to be serviceable. If they can move the ball a little bit against post falls with their running game, the way they've been playing quarterback, Buckhout's been doing a really good job at QB this year. They've got speed on the outside. We know they can hit the deep ball. And we saw it, what was it, like a 70-yarder last week. Gomez is going to pull away from anybody in the secondary. So can they get enough of a running game to not, have everybody pack the outside and only put 6 in the box and drop the extra DB? That's going to be the key there. If the running game can move the ball serviceably, it's going to keep Sandpoint. I think if they go ball control and they can keep it tight, it favors the Bulldogs. If it gets loose and fast early and Post Falls is able to move the ball at will in the running game, it could be a long night, because I don't think Sandpoint's going to get the touches to be able to, pull themselves back into a game.
Yeah, that was kind of our takeaway, is that Lewiston had a chance to, if they would have went for 2 in that game, they could have had a chance to cut that game really close, and they just ran out of time. And that was the story of Lewiston against Columbia too. They just ran out of time.
Yeah.
A little shout out for Lewiston defensive end Parker Bagley's probably the best D line in the North, hands down.
He's a stud. He's
good.
Stud. Yeah. No, there's some teams we haven't really even broke down yet, because we haven't seen them on Idaho Sports yet, but I'm excited to there's some guys. We could talk about the receiver tandem at Lakeland between Yeager, who's shown up, and now he's all of a sudden, we already knew, about some of the other guys in that offense, but Yeager has been showing up at wide receiver. And gosh, the 5A is stacked. I think the 5A, we've always talked about 6A football in North Idaho. Like, you get Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, 5A is every bit as good this year. And I don't want to say 6A is that far down. I think it's 5A's climbed the ladder that much with the level of coaching and the level of talent. It's leveling them out quite a bit.
Yeah. Lakeland plays Weiser. That'll be a good test to see where Lakeland lies in the Treasure Valley and how they match up with some of the teams down south. I think Lakeland probably has the edge, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Weiser is a really good football, great. Tom Harrison's a great coach down there, and they always do a good job. Xander gave him huge props after that game. Yeah, Bagley's good. He's a stud. Let's look at 6A quickly. Lake City plays out of conference. I think they play out of state. They play West Valley. We already hit on Post Falls. And then there's the big one, Lewiston and Coeur d'Alene. What would be your initial takeaway from Lewiston, Coeur d'Alene? Both teams one has to get a win this week.
Coeur d'Alene's got to figure it out sooner than later. I think the longer that they kind of dwell on, losing their starting running back and trying to find an identity, the more suffering that program could face. And I don't think, obviously the program is not in the dumps, but your season starts to drag on a little bit. You can't give Lewiston a chance. Lewiston got them last year, and that was a game that Coeur d'Alene let them hang around, and Lewiston got them. And, so if you're the Vikings, if you're going to show up Friday nights tonight, you got to show up from the whistle, from, total leather, you got to go. And, I would expect maybe Tanner Stern to get a few more touches this week. He's shown some flashes that they've got to find some spark. They've got to find it somewhere, whether it's, him out of a tight end position and just getting him on a fly route and letting him truck someone. They've got to get a spark somewhere. And we know defensively they can play. Silverton, Oregon's a good team. Historically, they're a great team out of the state of Oregon. They got out physical. Coeur d'Alene got out physical on Friday night. And so the Vikings are going to have to figure it out, go back to their roots of playing real tough physical football. We know that they've been able to score points in bunches in the past. I don't know if that's the same team this year. I think they're going to have to win ugly a lot. But they've got to get something on offense. They've got to get offense going.
Yeah, Lewiston, on the other side of things, Lewiston they've looked really good the last second half of
Yeah.
both games, like
Yep.
really good. And I'm curious. I'm sure Hobart's working hard with Blaze Hepburn right now, trying to just get him into a rhythm. That's not the guy that was getting all the reps during the summer. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more with the quarterback than they were, and more of like a power football.
Yeah.
Blaze is a really athletic kid, and he showed that last night when he got out in open space, and puts a lot of trust in his receivers. Michael Earl made a lot of big plays. They're going to be a tough team, and I can't wait for that. I will make one correction. Lake City will play Wenatchee
Wenatchee.
out of Washington. That's right. So that will be an interesting game. Wenatchee hasn't played a game this year, so that is an opportunity for Lake City to get a head up on the team that first game out the chute. Scaggs, let's switch gears. Last time, football stickers. Who do we got this week? This is something we do each and every week to, highlight players that we think, make a great effort, fill up the stat sheet. What are the stickers we have from your side of things?
So I'm going to go based on the first sticker I will give. I kind of mentioned him early on, but Keenan Moss from Bonners Ferry is my first sticker winner of the week. 23 carries, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the win against Priest River. Great showing from Bonners Ferry running back. They needed a big game out of him, and they certainly got it from him Friday night. I'm going to share a sticker, and I hate like consolation prizes, but I couldn't pick one or the other because the win was huge on the road, back-to-back weeks, long trips. Sandpoint's quarterback, wide receiver tandem, Braden Buckout and Maverick Gomez. Buckout was 16 of 21 passing for 299 yards and 4 touchdowns. And what did Gomez do? Just 7 receptions for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. So the lion's share of the offense ran through those two guys. Post Falls, if they want to get a win Friday night, they've got to figure out a way to shut down that tandem because they put points on the board in a hurry. And then my last and final, well, at least I'll give you one too, but my final one was John Denke from Quarter Christ, over 230 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns for Quarter Christ in the win on Friday night. And yeah, there's weapons on weapons with that team in 1A. I think they could be pretty darn good this year. They've shown it early on. They're going to have their big test is coming up a few weeks when they take on Logos. So it'd be interesting to see what they can do. I know they don't have the numbers that Logos has, but the guys that they have on the field they're showing up. Like their coach Clemens is getting great work out of his dudes and his studs. He's been able to, if he can keep them healthy, they're going to have a chance come October, November.
Yeah, John Denke is going to have a real challenge against Logos, real stifling defense that historically has done a really good job shutting down the run. My one sticker, I'm going to give it away. We're going to stay all District 1. Aiden Year Out from St. Mary's had 8 carries, 176 with 2 touchdowns against Salmon. Huge showing from Year Out and the Lumberjacks. And, maybe next week we'll have to turn our attention to District 2 because right now it's all up north above, essentially St. Mary's.
Yep.
Let's last point we'll hit on. There's some coaching hiring. The first one is this was about 2 weeks ago for Prairie girls basketball. They finally decided on a coach, and it's going to be Teal Bruner. Teal Bruner, it was the JV coach for the last couple years for the boys. Just from my experience being around him, he's an excellent head coach, excellent football, basketball, whatever you name it. He's a great person that's going to, be very successful for Prairie, and I'm excited for that one. And then the other one is Gil Pierce for Lake City baseball. Bet you didn't expect us to talk about baseball today, but Gil Pierce makes the step up to now be leading the Timberwolves for Lake City.
Yeah, I mean, stepping in for Mike Cresswell. And Coach Pierce, obviously, he was a JV coach last year. He coached for the Legion team up here. He is an LCSU Warrior. He played for Ed Chef. If you're an Ed Chef, dude, you're going to win some baseball games. I'm just going to say it right now. Like, Lake City had talent. I had the district tournament and the super regional last year here on Idaho Sports. And I tell you what, man, that Lake City group, they were flipping scrappy. And, they clipped Coeur d'Alene in the first game. Coeur d'Alene came back and got them in the last game to punch their ticket to state. But that's a great hire for the Timberwolves in-house. I mean, that's an easy transition for those guys. And yeah, I think it's a great pickup for Lake City getting Coach Pearson. And to echo you with Coach Bruner, that's a name that's been around Prairie for what feels like decades. Teal's a phenomenal hire, great motivator of kids, and he's going to do a great job with that program, taking over a very successful program. And I will expect to see continued success with him at the helm.
Yeah, no, they definitely look to be the favorite in District 2. I know Lapway, I think, is still looking for a coach for girls basketball. I think Josh Layton stepped down. So that is a big void. So Scaggs, if you're interested, there's an opening in Lapway, or at least there was a few weeks ago.
They don't want me. They won't make any shots, but they might be able to hit a double leg.
If you want to head down there. But to end this Prepcast, Scaggs will be in Priest River for the Grainsville Priest River game at 7:00 on Friday night. I will be in Kendrick for the Kendrick Hagerman game, same time, 7:00 on IdahoSports.com, always live and free. And one last shout out to Cornerstone Insurance. We forgot to put the logo up. Always our best sponsor on the North Idaho Prepcast. If you need anything with your insurance needs, head over to Ryan Scaggs and he'll fill you in with everything that you could handle. Scaggs, any last thoughts on our episode 4 on the Prepcast?
I mean, long way to go. We had a short time to get there, but yeah, best of luck to all the athletes in the field of play this weekend, whether it's on the golf course or soccer pitch or volleyball. There's a whole lot of cross countries kicking off, and we got we're in the middle of what looks to be a really interesting competitive football season. And if you didn't get a chance to watch last night on the Gem State game day, go back and give that a watch on Facebook or YouTube or wherever else you want to watch that. But you can be filled in for all the games statewide. And as we start getting into the season, we're going to have Max Preps rankings coming up sooner than later, and every game matters. So, we'll see how the field of play goes and Friday night and Saturday afternoon, and see how things shake up. And maybe somebody you can always enter. If you go to IdahoSports.com, you can enter our gridiron picks. I don't know if you guys know about that or not. Gridiron game picks, chance to play and win some cash. You can go create a free account and see if you can finally unseat me, because I'm going to brag a little bit this week. I've won 2 weeks in a row. So I'm wearing that expert title, at least with some sort of pride, because normally I don't like to call myself an expert, and I'm still not one. But yeah, I've won back-to-back weeks, so hopefully somebody goes in there and picks against me and beats me.
Hey, that's $50 in your pocket. I think I'm sitting in around 70th place, somewhere around there. I have a lot of work to do to catch up.
We'll share some notes off air.
Well, that'll be it for us on the North Idaho Prepcast. As for Ryan Scaggs, this is Hayden Uhlenkott. We will see you next week.